Hello, I'm Darth Vangoff, and this is Star Wars Saga Edition, a critique of the system. This is a discussion that's a continuation of one of my previous videos, Star Wars Saga Edition, Why I Love the System and Hate the Edition. In that video, I gave a brief overview of the rules, but I didn't want to get too bogged down into details because I was busy proving a point. So this video is simply everything I wanted to say in my previous video about the system, about the rules, and about the mechanics of the game that I just didn't have time to go into. And lo and behold, there's a lot that I have to say that I didn't get around to mentioning. So, allow me to continue on here. When you're listening to this video, there are 5 points I want you to be paying attention to. 3 main points and 2 minor points. The 3 main points are: does the edition provide for the character creation flexibility as it's supposed to? And this is an edition that I think does a good job in providing you with flexibility in character creation, but I think it could have gone further. It just seems to fall short for some reason. I can't tell why, but I will explain that later on. For the second point, does the edition allow you to have flexibility in the actions you perform? In my previous video, I praised this for having an action combat system. That is, the game plays out like an action movie. But does it actually do that fully? As in, could it have gone further, and did it stop short? The third main point is the game well play tested at all levels? 2 minor points: are the rules well written? And the other minor point is flavor versus effectiveness. And these are minor points only because in order to prove my point fully, I'd have to read you the text verbatim. I'm not going too much into that, so these 2 points I will gloss over. But even though I'm glossing over them, they're important enough for me to mention that I at least want to get my opinions out there. So I'm going to start with what I like about this system. This is a system where your character starts out at level 1 and fights stormtroopers and Sith Lords until they gain experience. They level up 1 level at a time until they get to level 20. 20 is the maximum level you can have, so this is a level 1 through 20 system. And you add your level to your defenses. And why is this important? In other role-playing games, you have something called will and fortitude. Basically, how much you can shrug off mental attacks and attacks to your body system. That scale with you as you level up. But the important thing is, in this system, you add your level bonus to reflex defense. That's not too much of an innovation. In other role-playing games, you might have a reflex score to show how much you get out of the way of area attacks, or attacks where you jump out of the way. But in this system, you also use your reflex for dodging just normal attacks, as in someone's trying to stab you with a knife, you use your reflex to avoid that. And the reason why I think this is important is, since you add your level to your reflex defense, and your reflex defense guards against normal attacks, this shows you getting out of the way of attacks. One of my gripes about Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder is the fact that an unarmored 20th level fighter and a level 1 unarmored fighter, both unarmored, one's 20, one's level 1, they have an equal chance to get out of the way of an attack. And granted, the higher level fighter might have dodge, the dodge feat, and the higher level fighter might have a higher dexterity score, but assuming they don't have dodge and they have the same dexterity, and they're not using any specific actions like combat expertise, they are equally easy to hit. And I believe that as you become more of an experienced and veteran warrior, you should be able to get out of the way more and dodge and parry attacks better. That's why I like this type of defense system. The other thing I like about this game is you add half your level to damage. Now, this is nice because just as much as being a more experienced warrior, adventurer, so on and so forth, allows you to get out of the way better, it should also allow you to fight better. And you have a score called base attack bonus, which allows you to land hits better. But I also believe that Your experience should also add to making a more palpable hit. And this is half your level to damage, so it won't make a huge difference, but it's a consistent thing you always add, and it will add up after over many attacks. And it's something to represent the fact that you hit harder. So if a 20th level soldier in Star Wars Saga Edition and a first level soldier in Star Wars Saga Edition both hit, say, a giant beast, the 20th level soldier will add 10 extra points of damage. Just something to show that they're a more experienced soldier and that they fight better and land better hits. One last thing I should mention is the lack of reliance on magic items. This is Star Wars, right? There's not a lot of magic items. There's the Force, but it's not the same as fantasy magic, where a wizard enchants a sword and it's a sword of destiny or something, and someone just uses it to overcome something as a substitute for just having good skill at swinging a sword. That's another thing I hate about Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons is so much reliance on magic. In this edition, you do have something called the Tech Spec Feat, found in the Starships of the Galaxy book, Starships of the Galaxy, page 21. And there's also a follow-up feat found in the Scum and Villainy book on page 24 called Superior Tech Spec. And these upgrade items to give a small bonus to represent the fact that these are well-crafted items. But really, these bonuses are small compared to the magic bonuses you would find in Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder. So those are the things I like about Star Wars Saga Edition. Then there are things I want to mention that are simply comparisons. Comparisons to D20 Modern and Dungeons & Dragons 4th Edition, specifically 4th Edition. And the reason I want to mention the comparisons to these two games is because of the fact that I mentioned it in my previous video, how Star Wars Saga Edition is based off of those two other games, and takes the best from both of those other games. And I didn't go too much into this in my last video, so I'll go more into it here. So for D20 Modern, there's a feat called the Burst Fire feat that's kind of iconic to that game. It's also in Star Wars Saga Edition. They kind of took it from that game, put it in this game. Also, multi-classing is encouraged. In D20 Modern and in Star Wars Saga Edition, you want to multi-class, whether it be from one core class to another core class, or a core class to a prestige class. Either way, you want to multi-class. And there's also a damage threshold system. The way the damage threshold system works in each game is different, but the idea is there. That is, you have hit points, but if a single hit lands hard enough, even if you have lots of hit points, a strong attack can take the wind out of you or could do something more horrible, depending on whether it's D20 Modern or Star Wars Saga Edition. As for the comparisons to 4th Edition, Star Wars Saga Edition has a smaller selection of skills than other D20 games, or games based off of the D20 system. That is, take spot, listen, search, and maybe read lips or sense motive or other skills that rely on you being perceptive. Roll them into one skill called perception. That's an example of consolidating skills. So you don't have to put who knows how many ranks in one skill and in another skill and in another skill and do all this math. There's a small selection of consolidated skills that cover broad skill sets. So you don't have to be putting ranks into specifically reading lips. But even though you can read lips really well, you can't spot or search really well. None of that. One thing to note, though, is that the climb, jump, and swim skills are consolidated into an athletics skill in 4th Edition, but they remain separate skills in Star Wars Saga Edition. Also, the skill system is similar from 4th Ed to Saga Edition because you are untrained, trained, or specialized in a skill. You don't have to put so many ranks in them. Just keep track of whether you're trained in them, you're specialized in them, or your character's not really familiar with using that skill. There is also a MOOC system in Saga Edition, which is kind of like 4th Edition. The actual mechanics aren't the same, but the idea is the same. You fight a mook that doesn't really do a whole lot of damage, doesn't really last very long, but serves as an additional target and serves as just something to add an extra attack to have a chance of whittling down the player characters. Also, one last similarity between 4th edition and Saga Edition, there's higher hit point scaling at level 1, and this is Star Wars, so you're dealing with blaster bolts, right? So you don't want to just be a first level character and fall just because someone punched you really hard. There's higher hit point scaling for first level, which I think is a wise choice for Saga Edition. Before I go into any of my criticisms of the Saga Edition, there's just some things I want to mention that are just like miscellaneous quirks. First off, using skills in this edition allow you to take 10s and take 20s. Basically, if you've played other D20 games, you're probably familiar with those mechanics. This edition allows you to take 10 and 20 on skills in situations that you wouldn't be able to in other editions. It's more lenient in allowing you to take 10 and 20. There's a damage threshold system in this game that I mentioned before, the comparison to D20 Modern. The funny thing is, in this edition, the amount by which you exceed that damage threshold doesn't really matter a whole lot. So if you have a damage threshold of 15 and someone deals you 20 points of damage, it has the same effect on your condition track as being dealt 50 points of damage. It's a big difference in damage. It doesn't matter how much you exceed the threshold, just exceeding it is enough. The game mechanics are also described in terms of the grid, and I do not like this, but it's not too bad. It's different than 4th edition in that it's not too married to the grid. I very even rarely use the grid when running a Star Wars Saga Edition game. And it's just like convert the grid numbers into meters. 1 square equals 1.5 meters. Done. There are some background options from the Rebellion era book. It's nice. It gives your character an additional flavor. It's kind of like the trait system from Pathfinder, but it's more streamlined, more simplified. But it's not part of the core book, and I think that it should be a part of the core thing. And granted, some of the background stuff, particularly the parts of what did the Galactic Empire do to your character that caused you to have a grudge against them, that won't work in all eras, particularly the eras where there is no Galactic Empire. But there are other options that I think should be a core part of the experience, and this should not be hidden in the Rebellion era book. Now, one of the points I mentioned earlier, one of the questions I brought up is, does this edition allow you to have the flexibility in character creation that it intends for you to have? And I'm going to answer that by saying no. Now, why is that? First, in a system that is a 20 level based system, that is, your level ranges from 1 to 20, you cannot gain a prestige class until level 8. And why is that important? Well, say you're a level 7 character, you might want to have a background that says you're a bounty hunter and all that. You can't get the bounty hunter prestige class until level 8. Granted, even though you don't have the bounty hunter prestige class, you can go around and collect bounties. You can go around capturing criminals, turning them into authorities, and collecting bounties. Nothing's stopping that. It's just, it would be nice for you to have something built into your character that would represent that before level 8. Minor complaint, though. Now, my question is, do you have enough feats? And the answer should be yes. You have enough feats, right? At level 1, you gain a feat. At every third level, so at level 3, 6, 9, 12, you gain a feat. But at every even level in a core class, you gain a bonus feat. And this is not any feat. The bonus feat's a feat that matches the class theme. And there's a list of feats for each class of what could be taken as a bonus feat for getting an even level in that class. And that's all nice and well when you're leveling up in your core classes. But starting at level 8, you'll want to go into a prestige class, and prestige classes don't give you an option to take a bonus feat. So you'll probably gain 7 levels in a core class, which means 3 bonus feats, and then you'll get a feat every third level, and you also get a feat at level 1, an extra feat if you're human. The reason why this is a problem is because you get a talent at every odd level in a class, except Crime Lord. The Crime Lord Prestige class gives you a talent every single level. Other than that, you get a talent every odd level. So eventually, you'll be getting somewhere around 11 feats at level 20, and you'll probably have about 10 talents at level 20. And why is this important? I think it's important because feats are supposed to be easier to access and more common than talents. Talents are supposed to be more valuable. So you should have more feats than talents just because that seems how the edition is intended to be. And maybe I'm mistaken. But just from my examination of the system, that's how it seems to be. If you're just using the core rulebook, maybe you do have enough feats, right? You're just selecting from the feats from the core rulebook, and hey, you have enough. But once you get into using other books, you might see a large variety of feats that really bring flavor to your character, but you don't have enough feat slots and feat selections to gain those feats. And this is something I also want to mention that is a theme also to the question I had of flavor versus effectiveness. That is, there are a lot of feats that give you a really not very good benefit, but they're flavorful to your character concept. But if you only have so many feats, you might want to just stick with what makes your character more powerful. Another thing I want to mention is prerequisites. Does a prerequisite get between you and your character concept? The NPCs that Wizards of the Coast added in the edition don't even necessarily meet these prerequisites. The melee defense feat, page 86 of the core rulebook, has a prerequisite of Intelligence 13+. But if you look through this, if you go to the Legacy era book and you look at the stats for some of the Sith Lords, I think Darth Kryat has this problem. They have the melee defense feat, but they don't have an intelligence of 13+. Maybe there has been an errata for this, and maybe I just haven't seen the errata, but I'm not sure about that. And another thing is, there are some characters that took levels in Force Adept without meeting the prerequisite of having 3 Force talents. The Imperial Inquisitor, from the Unleashed book, page 184, has this problem. That character has only 2 Force talents taken before gaining the levels in Inquisitor. The Imperial Inquisitor is the only example I could find right now. I'm pretty sure there have been other examples, but I just can't find any at the moment. The people who created this edition didn't even adhere to their own prerequisites, probably because when they were creating Darth Kryat and the Imperial Inquisitor, the rules restricting what you can give the character probably tied their hands too much. They just probably said screw it and gave their characters levels in Force Adept or the melee defense feat, regardless of the prerequisites. And if this was a problem for the creators of the game, imagine what it must be for a player character. Prerequisites serve as a barrier for you selecting an ability for your character. Why does a Force Adept need 3 Force talents as a prerequisite? You're already trained in using the Force. Having Force powers has nothing to do with getting prerequisites for Force Adept. What if you don't have any Force talents? But what if you have lots of Force powers? What about that? You're still adept in using the Force. You should still be able to gain levels in Force Adept, right? What about if you have skill focus in the use of the Force? Doesn't any of that count? And another problem of mine is the Elite Trooper Prestige class. You need some pretty specific prerequisites for that class. So the prerequisites are Light Armor Proficiency, Medium Armor Proficiency, Martial Arts 1, and Point Blank Shot. And you need at least 1 talent from the Armor Specialist, Commando, or Weapon Specialist talent trees. And you need a base attack bonus S7+. Now, this isn't too bad, but why Point Blank Shot? I mean, if you're a Commando, shouldn't you have weapon proficiency rifles and pistols? And why Point Blank Shot? Why not weapon focus pistols or rifles? I mean, I'll admit my bias. I don't care much for the Point Blank Shot feat. Usually I will get that feat, and then I will forget my character has it, and then I will never use it. because I hate figuring out, oh, I'm in a certain range, I have to apply this bonus. I just hate having to keep track of a bonus that I have to apply at certain times, but not other certain times, and it gets too much. But why armor proficiency medium? I mean, if you're a commando, armor proficiency light kind of makes sense. But why medium? I mean, you don't want to be like doing commando stuff in bulky armor. And granted, you might have the armor defense and improved armor defense talents to help you with this, but still, why? I don't like that you have to get all these feats to get the Elite Trooper Prestige class, only because I don't think they should all be necessary. And in fact, even in the Knights of the Old Republic book, what they did is they had feats that substituted for the point-blank shot martial arts feat in case you didn't want to build your Elite Trooper in a specific way. So they built in ways around getting those prerequisites. Probably because they knew it wasn't the best choice to have those two feats as prerequisites. One such example is the Flurry feat on page 33 of the KOTOR book. This substitutes for the point-blank shot feat as a prerequisite for the Elite Trooper class in case you wanted to build a more melee-oriented Elite Trooper. Another thing is, with the Elite Trooper Prestige class, is you get talent trees that build upon earlier talent trees from the Soldier class, but when you level up in the Elite Trooper Prestige class, you can't gain the talents from the earlier Soldier class. So what do I mean by this? So the Soldier has a Weapon Specialist talent tree that allow you to get talents such as Weapon Specialist rifles. The Elite Trooper Prestige class has a Weapons Master talent tree. This allows you to get greater weapon specialization rifles. But let's say you gain a level in Elite Trooper and you want to specialize in rifles. You can't do that unless you gain the Soldier talent Weapon Specialist rifles. But let's say you're a level 7 Soldier and you want to go to your first level in the Elite Trooper Prestige class upon gaining level 8. So if you gain the Elite Trooper Prestige class, if you already had the Weapon Specialization talent, you can gain the Greater Weapon Specialization Rifles talent upon gaining your first level in Elite Trooper. But if you didn't get the Weapon Specialization Rifle talent as a Soldier, and you had 7 levels in Soldier, hoping to gain your 8th level in Elite Trooper, you would have to gain 2 more levels in Soldier, so you can gain a Soldier talent when you level up to 9th level Soldier. And then, upon leveling up from level 9 to 10, then you can get your first level in Elite Trooper, and you can get the Greater Weapon Specialization talent. And this may seem minor, but in a level 1 through 20 system, where you can't gain your first Prestige class until level 8, you don't want to have to gain those extra 2 levels in Soldier just to gain a talent in the Elite Trooper Prestige class. There have been times when I'm building NPCs and this has become a factor. So I just want to point this out. And I think that Jedi has a similar problem. There are some talents from the Jedi class that are prerequisites for talents in the Jedi Knight Prestige class, yet you can't gain those abilities in the Jedi Knight Prestige class. You have to go back to the normal Jedi class and gain those prerequisites, which is just maddening, because if you want to build your character in such a way to have certain Force techniques, you have to gain levels in Jedi Knight. So you want to hit Jedi Knight as soon as you can at level 8. You don't want to have to deal with the Jedi stuff from the base class. The way the game is designed, when you start at level 1, you have a selection of skills you can choose from, which is determined by your class. And if you're using the background system from the Rebellion era book, those backgrounds also expand upon the skills you can choose from. But after that, you can gain a feat called Skill Training. But when you choose a Skill Training feat, you can only choose from the selection of skills that you had available to you at level 1. And I think this is horrible because it forces you to multi-class just to gain the ability to get a skill. And that skill can help you achieve your character concept. But simply because you didn't have a level in Scout or Scoundrel, if you had a soldier, you might have to gain a level in Scout or Scoundrel just to get access to that skill, unless you had a background that allowed you to have access to that skill. And I think after first level, when you gain the skill training feat, you should be able to get any skill you want, just like in 4th edition. Just gain whatever you want so you don't have to multi-class into another class. Or at least, or somehow expand upon the background system that was found in Rebellion. Like I said earlier in this video, making it a core feature rather than just some tacked on thing. And just one thing I can't help but mention, at every even level in a base class, you gain a bonus feat. That is from a selection of feats on a list that's based on your class. But Jedis can't spend their bonus feats to gain the Force Training feat. They have to use their general feats. But Force Training is such a core thing for Jedi that it's just like, how do you build a Jedi without Force Training? You should be able to use at least one selection of Force Training as a bonus feat. Maybe you can only spend one of your bonus feats from the Jedi class on Force Training, even though normally you can gain that feat as many times as you want. Maybe you can only use it once for purposes of bonus feats, but you should still have somehow access to it as a bonus feat, and not have to solely use your general feats. Now it's time to discuss if this game gives you the flexibility of performing actions that it's supposed to. Let me dive right in by mentioning the grapple and grab rules. I think this is a sore weakness in the edition, a sore spot. First off, to grapple someone, you can't really do it. Every character can grab someone. That is a core action. You go up, you grab their sleeve, and you hold on, and they try to tug their arm away from you, and they are just either automatically successful or not. It's really weird. It's just compare your level, heroic level, to the heroic level of someone grabbing you. If you exceed, good, great, whatever. And if you're only grappled against one person, then you automatically escape their grab, even if they're level 20 and you're level 1. So it's supposed to be streamlined, but I think it's really, really terrible. Now, there are other options, such as you're actually putting the person in a pin, which is like a headlock, or you're throwing them, crushing them, tripping them, whatever. But each of these abilities are feats. So in order to do any of these things, you have to have a feat. So just a normal thing of just wrestling someone, and I'm not even saying professionally wrestling someone, just doing anything more than grabbing their arm, you have to have a feat for. The thing is, this edition is supposed to allow you to try anything and have a chance of success. The thing is, the multi-grab and knock head feats from the Legacy era book sound cool, right? Cusp someone's head in your right hand, cusp someone's head in your left hand, slam their heads together, and you damage them. But you have to have feats for these. And maybe they should have feats to like give you bonuses when using these particular actions. Like, you have to have proficiency in these actions, but if you don't have proficiencies, you can still attempt them at a penalty without proficiency. But they don't have that. They just have, you can either do it or you don't. And I think this is a flaw, because this whole game is based on you trying something and having a chance of success, even if it's small. Having a proficiency in the pin, crush, trip, throw actions when grabbing someone, or proficiency in the multi-grab and knocking heads, that sounds cool. You can try these actions, even if you're not proficient in them, but you'd want to be proficient in them just to be good. This game doesn't have them. So a proficiency system for actions, particularly grappling actions, sounds pretty good. Wish this game had that. There is an ability from the Jedi Academy Training Manual called Eyes of the Force, which is a Force regiment found on page 10. The last benefit in that ability is the ability to read someone's surface thoughts. And this is something that Darth Vader used at the end of Return of the Jedi on Luke Skywalker when Luke Skywalker was trying to hide in the shadows from him. Yet Darth Vader doesn't have this ability because Darth Vader was stated in the core rulebook, and this ability came out in Jedi Academy Training Manual. Now that's a small problem, okay, I think that this should have been just an ability found in a core use of Use the Force. The reason being is that you saw it in the third film. Darth Vader doesn't have this ability, yet he can read surface thoughts. So I think this somehow should have been incorporated into the edition differently than just as a last ability of Eyes of the Force regimen. In Saga Edition, there is no ability to use a handle animal skill, an animal empathy skill, or any ability to affect animals. Unless you're a Force user, then there is something from the Witches of Dathomir talent tree for their Force tradition, and a few abilities from the Jedi Academy training manual for Force users, but nothing for just like a guy who lives out in the wilderness. Nothing for that. And since I'm on that topic, there is no perform, craft, or profession checks, just the mechanic skill. That's for just making things in general. But what about making something that doesn't fall into mechanical tinkering? What if you want to just be an artist and paint a really good picture? What do you use? The weapon proficiency rules is that you can use a weapon unproficient, but you take a -5 penalty to your attack rolls. And this is a pretty severe penalty, so why bother even using weapon unproficient? Maybe the proficiency system should be less severe, except for lightsabers. Lightsabers should be hard to use without being proficient in them. But otherwise, even for simple weapons, you get a -5 penalty for using them unproficient. I think just there should be no need to use simple weapons without proficiency unless you're like a beast, like a monster. If you're like a humanoid, you should get simple weapon proficiency for free, maybe. I mean, technically, all PCs have it as a feat from their base class, and the non-heroic class for mooks, you can access it as part of your first level things, but you don't necessarily have to. I don't know, I'm just putting it out there. And one problem I have is the linguist feat. In the Star Wars galaxy, maybe this should appear under flexibility in creating characters, but speaking language is an action, so I'm putting it here. In the Star Wars galaxy, everyone knows like 10, 20, however many languages. It just seems like everyone's multilingual. First off, the linguist feat has an intelligence prerequisite of 13+. So if your character has an intelligence of 12, they get one bonus language for having an intelligence of 12, and then they can never learn any other languages. What if someone's not intelligent, but they just immerse themselves in other cultures? So they would want to take the linguist feat to represent the fact that they gain bonus languages outside of their intelligence, but they're just not intelligent. The linguist feat fails to do that, or fails to allow a character to do that, to show that, to be fleshed out that way, because it has a prerequisite of 13+. Is this game well playtested? I don't think this game's well playtested. Let me give you a quick example. So there's an ability from the Master Privateer Prestige class called Keep Them Reeling from Scum and Villainy, page 33. You can gain this ability, I think, as early as level 8. And if you're a level 8 character, you can use it on a level 20 character, even if that level 20 character has a giant will save. It's just, you can use it on a character, regardless of their will save. They don't really have a good way of resisting it. And I think that's just a very poor thing. Now, that's just like a quick thing for me to throw out there. So let me get to the big thing. The thing that I think is the biggest flaw in this edition. So there's 5 base classes. There's Soldier and Jedi, which have a full base attack. That is, for every level you gain in Soldier and Jedi, you gain 1 point of base attack bonus to help you land hits. The Noble, Scoundrel, and Scout classes, core classes, have a 3/4 base attack. That is, for every 4 levels you gain a base attack bonus of 3 added to your current base attack. And that's fine, right? The problem is, each heroic character gains their full heroic level 2 defenses, including reflex defense. You use reflex defense to avoid having hits land on you. So, a 20th level Scoundrel, trying to hit another 20th level Scoundrel, they add +15 to their attack for their base attack, but they add +20 to their defenses, So it's harder for them to hit each other at the higher levels than it is at the lower levels. And this wouldn't be too much of an issue, right? It's only a difference of 5 what they add to their defenses versus their attack. And keep in mind the base to hit someone is 10. So it's 10 plus their heroic level for the reflex defense, whereas it's just plus 15 for their base attack to hit. So not including anything else, just including the level and base attack, it is you're rolling 1d20 and adding 15 and trying to get up to a total of 30 or more. So you have to roll a 15 or higher. So the 20-sided die that you roll has to show a 15 or higher for this one scoundrel to hit the other. But it gets worse. There's also something called class bonus to defenses. So scoundrels have a +2 class bonus to defenses, but they're also likely to go into a prestige class that gives you +4 to your reflex defense. So a scoundrel would at 20th level would probably have a 32 or 34 reflex defense. That means the 20-sided die would have to show 17 or 19 to hit. Now, I'm not including dexterity because it can add to attack as just as much as defense, assuming you're not trying to use strength for a melee weapon. I'm assuming you're either using weapon finesse for a melee weapon or you're using a ranged attack. Just not including dexterity, just including the things that scale defenses up versus things that scale up attacks. It's almost impossible to hit the opponent once you're 20th level. Soldiers and Jedi don't have this problem so much because they get full base attack, but still the defenses scale more than the offense just because of the class bonuses. And if you're playing a Jedi or a soldier, you're probably not going to have too big of a class bonus to your reflex defense like a scoundrel would. Depends on the prestige class you go on and how you build your character, but still, it's probably not as bad. But still, not everyone's playing a Jedi or a soldier at the high levels. Now, I want to go back to my first point I made for why this game is poorly test played. The Keep Them Railing ability, that's an example of an ability that allows you to affect someone but doesn't target a save. There's another one I want to mention. That is Sadistic Strike from Galaxy of Intrigue, page 28. Sadistic Strike allows you to perform a coup de grace on someone and demoralize nearby opponents by dropping their condition track 1 step. And once their condition track's dropped 5 steps, they're unconscious. So let's say 5 first-level players have this, and they perform a coup de grace on some characters. And there's a 20th level character watching this. That 20th level character is instantly put unconscious just because they witnessed the coup de grace, which is a little broken, and that is just not very well designed. Now another thing. Jedi and Soldier are very much combat classes that have a full base attack, and the fact that they're combat classes is also represented in their high hit die type, or that is, they have higher hit points than the other classes. This is made up for by them having worse skill selection and fewer trained skills at first level. So Scouts have a D8 hit die, but make up for it by having better skill selection and higher trained skills than the Soldier and Jedi. The Scoundrel and Noble have a D6 hit die, so it's lower than Scouts, and the Noble makes up for it by having better skill selection and higher amounts of trained skills. But the Scoundrel, even though it has a D6 hit die, also has lower amounts of trained skills than the Scout. So a Scout has an amount of trained skills equal to 5 plus their intelligence modifier, plus an additional 1 if they're human, at first level. But a Scoundrel only gets 4 plus their intelligence modifier, plus 1 if they're human, and yet they still have a lower hit die type. Why is that? I think that might have been an oversight. Maybe it's intentional, I don't know. Now, there's a mechanic in this edition, and I should have mentioned this in the D20 Modern section, but in Saga Edition you have something called Force Points. They're the equivalent of action points from D20 Modern, so it's another influence I think I forgot to mention. Force Points are something you gain at each level, and you gain a finite amount of them, and as you use them, you lose them, and you don't refresh them until you gain another level. This is great because you can't spam them. You don't know when you're going to level up, so you want to hold on to your force points until you need them. They're there when you need them, but you use them only when you need to. So normally, force points just boost an action and give you a little oomph to overcome an obstacle. The problem is the way they're implemented. Sometimes you just need a force point just to use an ability in the first place. And abilities with some subtle effects, such as the Fool's Luck talent, a scoundrel talent in the core book, page 46, that's something subtle. So that's fine. But then there are talents such as the illusion talent. And that's been reprinted a few times. I'm not even going to cite a source. But basically, you spend a force point and you create an illusion. But this probably should have been a force power. And the reason is, say you're an illusionist. Say you create illusions. Okay, so you have very few force points left. And you want to create an illusion. So you use your last remaining force points to create an illusion. No, in fact, let's say you're at full force points. Let's say you have 7 force points. Once per round, you create an illusion. So you just spam an illusion out like that. An illusion, an illusion, an illusion. And then once you reach zero force points, you can't create illusions. And let's say in-game, you're at your current level for like a year, and you don't level up. That's a year you can't use the illusion talent, but you're an illusionist. So why is it that you just spammed illusions, and then all of a sudden you can't use illusions anymore? How's there an in-game explanation for that? There's not. It's just a quirk of the mechanics. So now it's time to get into whether the rules are well written. So first off, the game doesn't make it clear whether you can make attacks of opportunity with pistols. Now you can make attacks of opportunity with pistols, but how does it work with ranged weapons making attacks of opportunity? So let's say I'm wielding a melee weapon, and someone runs past me, and they have to be within reach of me, and so I use my melee weapon as an attack of opportunity against them because they ran right by me and they weren't really guarded. But what if someone's like running 50 feet away from me, but I have a ranged weapon? So normally you can only make attacks of opportunity against people within your reach. But with ranged weapons, you have a range and not a reach. So does this mean I can make gun club attacks of opportunity, as in I can hit someone with the butt of my gun as an attack of opportunity when I'm using a pistol? Or can I just shoot at someone who just like ran 20 feet, but they're like 100 feet away from me? How does that work? And maybe there's a rule for that and I just haven't seen it, but I checked and I can't find anything. Whatever. When you're getting a prestige class, it says there's a prerequisite. For each and every single prestige class, it says there's a prerequisite of heroic level 7+. That means you need to get 7 heroic levels, and then when you level to level 8, then you qualify for the prestige classes. The exception is the independent droid prestige class, but other than that, 7 heroic levels. The thing is, there's a lot of characters in the books that have somewhere up to 6 non-heroic levels and just 1 heroic level before gaining a prestige class. So what they should have said is you need to have 7 total levels, and you need to have at least one of those levels be a heroic level before you gain a prestige class. It's a bit wordy and cumbersome, but that's how it actually is. That's how it's actually implemented in the edition. And it probably doesn't matter, only because the players, the actual players at the table, will not have non-heroic levels. They'll just have heroic levels, because non-heroic levels are only for non-player characters. But it should have been explained somewhere in the book, just so the Game Master knows, so when the Game Master creates characters, they can follow the actual rules, because the game doesn't follow the rules as written. And now it's time for flavor versus effectiveness. The Scoundrel has a talent from the core book on page 47 called Starship Raider. It gives you a +1 bonus to all your attacks when you're on a starship, or you're using a starship weapon, and that sounds great. The problem is the Scoundrel has a 3/4 base attack. So to gain a level in Scoundrel just to gain that ability, you did not gain a level in Soldier. The thing is, if you just gained that level in Soldier, you would have gotten that +1 just for everything, instead of just fighting on a starship or using starship weapons. and then you could have saved yourself having to spend a talent. The same thing goes for the Scoundrel's Skirmisher talent on page 46 of the core rulebook. It gives you a +1 bonus to attack rolls if you moved in a turn. But you could have just gained a level in Soldier and just gained a +1 bonus to your attack rolls in all circumstances, and you would not have had to waste a Scoundrel talent. Then there's the Trailblazer talent, a scout talent from Galaxy at War, page 21. The Trailblazer talent allows a scout to lead people through rugged terrain. Basically, this is a pretty crummy talent. Now, granted, depending on the type of game your GM runs, this might come in handy a lot, but it just so depends on the game your GM runs. Like 99% of games that you are in, this will probably never come up a whole lot, or at least it won't come up enough to justify actually gaining the talent. It does fit the scout class. It does add to the flavor, but it's not very effective. So the two Scoundrel talents I mentioned earlier, Skirmisher and Starship Raider, those are very flavorful. Your Scoundrel is one that's very mobile and uses mobility to gain the edge on the enemy, or they're just so familiar with the ship inside out that they are better and just more comfortable fighting on a ship. Getting these abilities for their flavor penalizes you in that you're less effective for having done so. The core rulebook has two noble talent trees, the Inspiration talent tree, page 43, and the Leadership talent tree, page 44. And these two noble talent trees not only touch upon the problem I mentioned of flavor versus effectiveness, just a consistency of design, that I think these two trees are designed a bit poorly, even though they're both good. And there are two main reasons for that. First, each talent tree has a main talent that the whole tree revolves around, or almost the whole tree revolves around. The Inspiration talent tree has Inspire Confidence. Inspire Confidence gives you a +1 morale bonus on attack rolls and skill checks until the end of the encounter, and you basically activate it as a standard action to inspire your allies. Once inspired, allies do not need to remain in line of sight with you. The Leadership talent tree revolves around the talent Born Leader. Once per encounter, as a swift action, you grant all allies within line of sight a +1 insight bonus to attack rolls. This lasts until the end of the encounter, or until they lose line of sight with you, or if the ally becomes unconscious or dead or whatever. First off, one of those talents is better than the other. Inspire Confidence gives a +1 bonus to both attacks and skill checks. It lasts until the end of the encounter, regardless of whether the ally loses line of sight of you or not. And it also is a morale bonus, which is more likely to stack with other bonuses. The Born Leader talent is an insight bonus. That will not stack with the Jedi's Battle Meditation talent on page 40, which also gives an insight bonus to attacks. The Born Leader talent does require only a swift action to activate, but I don't think this is enough to offset the lasting benefits that are from the Inspire Confidence talent. The Inspire Confidence talent may require a standard action, but the benefits are better in the long term. There is the Distant Command talent, also in the Leadership talent tree, that allows your benefits from the Born Leader talent to remain even if you lose line of sight of the ally. But that's basically a whole talent just to maintain that benefit that's already built into the Inspire Confidence talent, and the Inspire Confidence talent also gives you a bonus to skill checks. And it's only one talent as opposed to getting both Born Leader and Distant Command. I said I had two problems with these two talent trees and how they compare to each other. And I definitely do have a problem with how the balance is between the main talents that these trees are built around. But there's also another problem, and that is the consistency of the theme of the talent trees. The Inspiration talent tree is supposed to have a theme of inspiring zeal in your followers. Basically, you're such a fanatic in wanting to fight the enemy the fervor spreads to your allies, and then they get motivated, and they attack the enemies with bonuses that they get because you inspired them through your own zeal. The leadership talent tree is more you commanding people to do something, and they follow you. You are good at giving orders and delegating tasks to people. Your orders and directives make people perform a task better than if they did the task on their own. Although for some strange reason, this is only applied to combat actions, and you can only improve your followers' non-combat actions or their skill checks only if you inspire them through zeal for some reason. I don't know. I don't pretend to know. Now, both of these are basically you leading other people into battle. But it seems as if the inspiration talent tree is supposed to revolve more around morale bonuses. That is, inspire confidence. The main talent grants morale bonuses. The leadership talent tree is more about you being a commander, you commanding people. And the born leader talent is insight. Now, there is a talent within the leadership talent tree, the tree that's supposed to revolve around you being a good commander, and there's the fearless leader talent. Now, if you're a good leader, there's no reason why you can't take this talent. The fearless leader talent makes your allies more resistant to fear, and that's great. And I think that a good commander would make their subordinates have faith in them, and their subordinates would stay with them. But this is a morale bonus. So shouldn't it be in the other talent tree, in the inspiration talent tree? And maybe not. But then what's the point of having two talent trees? There's also a leadership talent called Rally, which is basically just rally the troops when they're on the edge of defeat for a final comeback, trying to turn the tides of battle. But thematically, this could also be in the inspiration talent tree. There's the Inspire Haste talent. Basically, your allies make a skill check with more efficiency, that it goes from a standard action to a move action. And that's great. Shouldn't this be in the leadership talent tree? Because you're commanding someone to do something and they do it with better competency and more efficiency? And I don't want to give the details for every single talent in these trees, but that's just basically my general takeaway is these talents are supposed to be defined as one being you're a motivational leader and the other one being your commanding leader. I'm not sure if that actually comes across in the actual talents in these trees. The reason why I'm comparing these two talent trees is there's been times when I want to build a noble that's based around group synergy, and I want to build one that inspires confidence and inspires zeal and is a motivational leader. But I want to get the fearless leader talent, but I have to get born leader as a prerequisite. In general, I think that it's difficult getting talents from either of these trees because the prerequisite seems to be in the tree that I'm not going into. So I have to go into the other tree to get prerequisites for the talent I want if I want that, even though my theme belongs in either one tree or the other. There is one more complaint about this edition that I will make in this video, and that is there are a series of talents that allow you to do one of three things, each once per encounter, and these talents are very cool. They allow you to do cool things. Earlier in this video, and in one of my previous videos, I mentioned how I liked that this edition played out like an action movie. That is, your character can do cinematic action stuff in this game. And I think that's a positive. And these talents that allow you to do one of three things each per encounter or per day do that. They allow you to do neat things that make you feel like you're in an action movie. But the way they're implemented is just wrong. So what am I talking about? Well, I'll point these talents out to you. In the Galaxy at War book, we have the Commanding Presence talent, page 19, a noble talent. We have, from the Scoundrel class, the Sly Competent talent, page 19. From the Scout class, we have Mobile Combatant, page 20. And from the Soldier class, we have the Grizzled Warrior talent, page 21. From the Unknown Regions book, we have the Noble talent, Band Together, page 19. We have the Scoundrel talent, Deep Space Raider, page 21. We have the Scout talent, Piercing Hit, page 21. And we have the Soldier talent, Champion, page 23. From the Scum and Villainy book, we have the Noble talent, Two-Faced, page 14. The Scoundrel talent, Dumb Luck, page 14. Also from the Scoundrel class, we have the Cunning Strategist talent, page 15. Oh, I've skipped a Noble talent from Scum and Villainy, the Beloved talent, page 14. The Scout talent, Shadow Strike, page 16. Another Scout talent, Swift Strider, page 17. And the Soldier talent, Experienced Brawler, page 18. From the Galaxy of Intrigue, we have the Master Manipulator Noble talent, page 20, and the Soldier talent Dedicated Guardian, page 24. And that's it from the Galaxy of Intrigue book. So I think these talents are good talents. I kind of like them. But why do I hate their implementation? These talents have two prerequisites each. And sometimes I want to do cool things, like one of these talents allows you to twist someone's helmet so that they're blind, so that the backside of the helmet's in front of them. And I think that's great. But in order for me to do that, and do that like once per day or once per encounter, I can't remember which talent exactly does that. In order for me to do that, I have to get two other talents that are prerequisites, and I don't want those talents. So I like my character being like some sort of trickster that does shenanigans to get himself out of situations, but I have to get two talents I don't want to be able to twist someone's helmet. Well, screw it. I guess I just won't twist someone's helmet. And in each of these talents that allow you to do three things as part of one talent, each of these talents just has that problem. I don't like their prerequisites. And of course, this goes back to the whole prerequisite thing I mentioned earlier in this video, but just don't even worry about that. Why is it that these abilities are structured in such a way? So let's say I want to twist someone's helmet backwards. Why can't I just attempt that without this talent? So without this talent, why can't I just try to grab someone, twist their helmet? I mean, maybe this talent should make it easier for you to do that, but why can't I just try to grab someone and twist their helmet around as I'm grappling them? Wasn't this game supposed to allow you to try anything and have a chance of success, regardless of how you built your character, and regardless of what class and feats you took? And if I take two prerequisites to take this talent to turn someone's helmet around, it gives me two other abilities that really aren't so powerful, only because I'm getting three abilities in one. No single one of these abilities can be powerful. But why is it that I have to get these two other sub-abilities of this talent? It's as if this game needed a mechanic that allowed you to do something minor as part of a subset of a larger feat or talent. That is, this edition needed a talent or feat that allowed you to select a subset of smaller, more minor abilities they could use either once per encounter or once per day. And you can choose among these abilities that you could use. But such a mechanic does exist. There is the Force Training feat from the core book. What it does is you pick the feat, you choose a number of force powers equal to your wisdom modifier, +1, and you add them to your force suite. And you can select a power more than once to add to your force suite more than once. So say you want to do Mind Trick twice. Well, you select it twice, you can use it twice per encounter. And you can use each force power an amount of times per encounter equal to the amount of times it's in your force suite. Great. Say during an encounter, you use Mind Trick twice, but you want to use Mind Trick a third time. What'll happen is either you spend a force point and you get that one use of one force power back, or you roll a natural 20 on a use of the force check during that encounter, and all your force powers refresh. Sounds great, right? But why not use that for these abilities? As in, why not take the ability to turn someone's helmet around and say you get like the combat stylist feat or combat trickster feat. And part of the combat trickster feat is you could choose one of several abilities. You could choose up to 3 of them. You could use each of them once per encounter or an amount of times per encounter equal to the amount of times in their suite. And they refresh under certain conditions. This would have been a great thing to do. And if you're saying, well, they didn't do that because they only did it for force powers, no, they did not do it only for force powers. There is precedent in this edition for them having such a mechanic apply to non-force using abilities. In the Starships of the Galaxy book, page 20, there's the Starships Tactics feat. Basically, it's like the Force training feat. You have to have vehicular combat and be trained in the pilot skill as a prerequisite, but if so, you gain the feat, and you gain an amount of starship maneuvers equal to 1 plus your wisdom modifier. These starship maneuvers are like force powers. You use each of them once per encounter, unless you selected them more than once, and they don't refresh unless you spend a force point to refresh one, or you roll a natural 20 on, I think it's a pilot check, but it could be an attack roll for the gunnery ones. I'm not completely sure, and I'm not going to look it up right now, but it's the general idea. You can do cool tricks with starships that function like force powers and have a similar mechanic, except using the pilot skill or an attack roll for the gunnery powers rather than use the force check. And it has the added benefit of you could do a whole lot of small things by selecting one feat, and say you want to do the Akbar slash, but you also want to do the wanton weave. Well, guess what? One feat, you have a wisdom modifier 1 or higher. You get 2 starship maneuvers. You pick those 2, and each one's not worth a feat. But guess what? You got 2 of them. Hey, there you go. You didn't waste the whole feat on just one small ability, and the abilities you have are the abilities you want. It makes your character more colorful and more awesome. It makes you feel like you're a character from an action movie because you're doing cool things. That's what they should have had for the talents that I mentioned that are a 3-in-1 talents, because it just gives you more flexibility. Going back to that idea of, is the character creation in this edition as flexible as it should be? I like this edition for how flexible the character creation is. It could have gone further. And this is an example of an opportunity sorely missed. In addition to these 3-in-1 talents, there are other talents that I think are not good enough to be a talent on their own, but would be good enough to be a smaller ability that you could choose as part of a subset of abilities. For example, there's a talent in the Force Unleashed book on page 28 called Dirty Fighting. Once per encounter, if you successfully damage an opponent with a melee or ranged attack, you reduce that target's damage threshold by 2 for the remainder of the encounter. I think this would have been perfect for a martial maneuver, as in an ability where it's not worth a feat or talent, but you can select it as part of a feat or talent that gives you multiple of these martial maneuver abilities. And in order to balance it, I probably wouldn't have it stack. So if an enemy had Dirty Fighting used on him more than one time per encounter, I probably would say no, it's just 2, and it can't be reduced anymore by Dirty Fighting until the another encounter. But still, I think this would be a perfect example of a martial maneuver. Another such talent would be the Weak Point talent on page 28 of the Knights of the Old Republic book. It's a scout talent that basically, once per encounter, allows you to ignore the damage reduction of an opponent. Weak point isn't good enough to be a talent on its own, but it would be better as a smaller ability that you could select from that you don't have to waste a whole talent for. And I think this edition falls flat because this edition is supposed to make you feel like you're in an action movie, right? You're supposed to be doing action-oriented stuff. But it just stops short of that. It stops short because you gain only so many feats and talents. But what if you can gain multiple abilities that are nifty and make you feel like you're in an action movie? It's not very effective. Hence the flavor versus effectiveness issue I brought up. However, you're not spending a whole feat or talent on just one of these abilities. You're getting, say, Dirty Fighting as one of 3 abilities that you get from a martial maneuver talent or feat. That'd be great. You could have some flavor, but you're not sacrificing effectiveness towards it because you're getting multiple of these abilities. You're not spending a whole feat just on that. You're spending a feat on that plus some other abilities. This will give you flexibility in character creation because you have only so many feats and talents. Will get more sub-abilities with just one feat. This would allow you greater flexibility in what you can do. So say you want to turn someone's helmet, well, you don't have the ability to turn around someone's helmet. But with just the cost of 1/3 of a feat or talent, you could do it. So there are things that I think you should be able to try without a feat or talent. But if this game requires you to have a feat or talent for it, you have to waste a whole feat or talent to do it. So do I want to waste a whole feat or talent to turn someone's helmet around? Now, I'm going to have a video in the future that goes further into this. So this whole 3-in-1 talent that should have been something different and should have had a different mechanic and should have been more customizable, I'm going to mention it in a future video. I am not sure if it's going to be my next video, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 2 more videos after this. Possibly 3. One of these videos is stuff I didn't get around to mentioning in any of my other videos. Just stuff I feel is wrong with the edition. Basically, stuff that's wrong with the edition that doesn't fall into the poor design of the books that I mentioned in my last video. And this video is also going to mention the Threats of the Galaxy book. My previous video was on why the books are bad and how the book design's bad, but I wasn't able to fit one of the books in there. The Threats of the Galaxy book will be fit in with my supposedly next video. My projected last video will be on if I were to re-release this edition, how would I re-release it differently? Basically, I hope you understand why I criticize this game for flexibility in character creation and flexibility in combat actions. Even though I praise the game in those 2 areas, I think it still falls short. And don't get me wrong, I understand why this happened. I think the company that created this game, Wizards of the Coast, was just so used to printing materials for Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition that they had too much difficulty doing something that was new to them, and they failed to have this edition play upon its own strengths. Or I don't think they knew the direction they wanted to go with this edition when they put out the core rules. I hope if there is a new edition for this game that my criticisms here will be taken into account. And the whole reason why I'm criticizing this game as I am is hopefully someone at Wizards or some other role-playing developer who's going to develop the next Star Wars role-playing game hears this and understands where Saga Edition falls short. I would love to have Saga Edition come out. I love the rules so much that I've thought about adapting them to other settings. So, a Samurai Jack game. Who's seen the show Samurai Jack? I thought about making a Samurai Jack RPG with just a house built using Star Wars Saga Edition rules, but it'd be too cumbersome, so I never did it. So I look forward to making my 2 other videos, but otherwise I'm done here. This is Darth Vangoff, and I will see you later. Thank you for listening.